Phone buzzed violently at 3 a.m., tearing through Emma's half-dream as she grabbed it with trembling fingers. Daniel said, "I'm too tired tonight," and those words crushed her chest harder than silence ever could. Emma whispered, "But you weren't too tired for her," the bitterness seeping into the dark room. Her thumb hovered over their old messages, her mind flashing back to nights she stayed awake just to catch his morning. Each line replayed his promises like a cruel echo. Her friend Sarah's warning rang louder. "Emma, don't give everything to someone who gives you fragments." But Emma had given everything. Her youth, her time, her heart. The quiet in her small apartment in Boston was unbearable, the shadows pressing closer. A notification blinked again, but it wasn't his voice she craved. Emma wanted Daniel's warmth, not excuses. She buried her face into her pillow, suffocating on hope and doubt. "How could you betray the one who waited?" she asked the silence, tears rolling like confessions. Morning came with cruel indifference, the sun slicing through blinds as Emma dragged herself from bed. Her reflection in the mirror was haunting. Red eyes, cracked lips, the ghost of someone who once believed in love's endurance. Emma whispered, "I waited for you, Daniel, when no one else would." She brushed her hair back with unsteady hands, remembering the time zones she bent her life around. At breakfast, the silence pressed harder than hunger. Her phone lit again, but it wasn't Daniel. Her heart sank, then numbed. She stared at the clock, calculating when he might finally wake. Sarah's words lingered. "You deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation." Emma's chest ached. Her life was becoming a waiting room, and she feared she was the only one sitting inside. Emma walked through the bustling street, yet every sound felt distant, muted by her storm. Couples laughed, hands entwined, their closeness taunting her. She whispered, "Daniel, you said distance was just a test." But it felt like a sentence. The ache of unkept promises echoed louder than footsteps. She stopped outside a flower shop, the sight of red roses burning her eyes. "Daniel once promised, 'When we meet again, I'll bring you roses.'" That memory now felt like a cruel joke. She hugged her coat tighter against the cool wind, heart shrinking with each breath. At work, Emma's eyes lingered on her silent phone more than on her screen. Her colleagues chatted about weekend trips, love lives, plans that seemed whole. She forced a smile, though inside she was unraveling. Daniel's absence was louder than the hum of computers. She tapped her pen against the desk, whispering, "Why is it so easy for you to forget me?" Hours blurred, but his silence remained sharp. That night, Emma sat by her window, the city lights blinking like distant stars. She whispered into the glass, "Daniel, do you even see me anymore?" The chill pressed into her skin, but her heart ached more. She remembered their first call, the promises of forever, the laughter that once bridged oceans. Now, the silence was louder than any storm. She pressed her forehead against the glass, her breath fogging it with each trembling exhale. The words she never sent burned inside her chest. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, phone in hand, scrolling back to the very first message Daniel sent. His words, "I'll never let distance change us," replayed like a cruel echo. She whispered, "Then why does it feel like you already let go?" Her chest ached as she remembered nights she skipped sleep just to align with his time zone. Friends asked why she stayed, why she endured empty calls and hollow promises. Emma told herself, because love is worth waiting for, though doubt now gnawed at her. She thought of Sarah's voice saying, "Emma, you are building a castle on quicksand." Emma pressed her palms to her face, feeling the sting of tears. She clutched the phone closer, needing proof that their story wasn't collapsing. The loneliness of her small Boston apartment wrapped around her like a chain, and she wondered if she was the only one still fighting. The hours crawled until evening, and Emma finally dialed Daniel's number. The line rang endlessly before his voice answered, weary and distracted. Daniel said, "I'm just busy, Emma. You know how it is." She forced a smile through the ache and replied softly, "I stayed up all night just to hear you." His silence pressed harder than words. She heard faint laughter in the background, a sound that didn't belong to her world. Her stomach twisted as she whispered, "Are you with someone?" Daniel's voice sharpened, "You're imagining things again." Emma closed her eyes, her chest burning with doubt and longing. Sarah's words came back. If he wanted to be there, he would be. But Emma clung tighter, desperate to keep him. After the call ended, Emma collapsed onto the couch, the silence roaring in her ears. She whispered to herself, "Why do I keep believing him?" The clock ticked louder with each second, mocking her patience. She remembered nights when Daniel promised, "We'll close the distance soon," yet the days stretched into years. Her phone lay face down, glowing faintly, a constant reminder of how her life revolved around someone far away. She pressed a hand against her chest, the heaviness unbearable. In her heart, she still clung to the boy who once made her laugh until her stomach hurt. But now she wondered if that boy was only a memory, and the man she waited for no longer existed. Emma met Sarah at a cafe, the aroma of coffee, unable to cut through the weight in her chest. Sarah leaned forward saying, "Emma, you deserve more than excuses." Emma forced a shaky smile and replied, "You don't understand, he loves me." Sarah sighed, her eyes heavy with worry. Love isn't proven in promises, it's proven in presence. Emma stirred her untouched coffee, her heart desperate to defend Daniel, yet every word from Sarah pierced with truth. She whispered, "If I stop waiting, then all of this will mean nothing." Sarah reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "No, Emma, it will mean you finally chose yourself." Emma's throat burned as she looked away, unable to answer. That night, Emma sat again by her window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. She whispered, "Daniel, I keep choosing you. Will you ever choose me?" Her phone stayed silent, its screen black, reflecting only her face. The weight of years pressed on her shoulders, each sacrifice suddenly visible. She thought of family dinners missed because she waited for his late-night calls, of friendships neglected while she clung to hope. Tears welled as she realized her life was being lived for someone who might not even notice. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass, heart breaking against the silence. Sarah's voice echoed, "Love shouldn't feel like begging." Emma closed her eyes, whispering into the night, "But I still can't let go." Emma sat by her desk, staring at the unanswered messages stacking up on her screen. Daniel had said, "Work is insane, I'll text later," but later stretched into days. Her chest tightened with each empty bubble left unseen. She whispered, "I'm always waiting, Daniel, but you're never arriving." The silence grew crueler as she watched their conversations thin like worn-out threads. Sarah's voice echoed in memory, "He's not too busy, Emma. He's just not choosing you." Emma bit her lip until it stung, fighting tears. She glanced at the clock, midnight again, yet no call, no words. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, typing and erasing, desperate to be heard without begging. The next evening, Emma scrolled through social media, her heart jolting as Daniel's smiling face appeared. He stood in a crowded bar, arms slung casually around another woman. Emma gasped, whispering, "So you weren't too tired for her?" Her stomach churned with betrayal. Every promise of loyalty cracked in her mind like shattered glass. She pressed her forehead to her phone, tears burning hot. "Why do I always defend you when you won't defend me?" she whispered. The glow of his photo stayed on her screen, mocking her faith. Sarah's warning screamed louder, and for the first time, Emma felt a fire beneath the heartbreak, anger tangled with love. Emma confronted Daniel over video call, her voice trembling but fierce. "Why do I see you with her while I sit here waiting?" Daniel laughed nervously, brushing it off. "She's just a friend, Emma. You're overreacting again." Her chest tightened at the word, "again," as though her pain was unreasonable. Emma's voice cracked, "Do friends replace the calls you promised me?" His face hardened, and he muttered, "You're suffocating me with your neediness." Tears blurred her vision, yet she held his gaze. "I'm suffocating because you keep cutting off the air," she whispered. The silence that followed cut sharper than his words. Days passed with short, clipped messages from Daniel, each one colder than the last. Emma read them on repeat, her heart sinking deeper. Busy, later, can't talk now. Each word a wall between them. She sat on her couch whispering, I gave up so much to hold on to this, and all I get is fragments. The loneliness swelled into something unbearable, as though the city itself was pressing down on her chest. She thought of Sarah's steady words, you are building your whole life around a ghost. Emma pressed her phone to her heart, eyes closing, afraid that maybe Sarah was right. That night, Emma dreamed she was at the airport, waiting at arrivals with roses in hand. Passengers streamed past, families embracing, lovers reuniting. But Daniel never appeared. She whispered in her sleep, you promised you'd come. She jolted awake, heart racing, staring into the dark. The image of his absence was more real than any dream she had known. Her pillow was damp, her hands trembling as she clutched the blanket tight. Am I holding on to something that already left me? She asked the emptiness. The silence answered with its own cruel finality. The silence fractured when James finally spoke, his voice brittle as cracked glass. She told me things you were never meant to know. Anna's body stiffened, her breath shallow, as if the air itself betrayed her. She whispered, Margaret never turned her voice away from me. James' eyes flickered with unease, his jaw tight, his hands buried deeper in his pockets. The chipped mug caught the faint lamplight, its scar glowing like a wound long ignored. Anna's chest heaved as she pressed her palm to the floor, whispering, you stole her words and buried them in your silence. His shoulders slumped, but he said nothing. Margaret's photograph leaned in the corner, her smile unwavering, yet her absence screamed through the room. Anna's voice hardened. Your silence was never mercy, it was control. Shadows lengthened as the lamp flickered, the walls bowing under the weight of betrayal. For the first time, James' silence collapsed under the sharp edge of her words. Anna's voice broke through the quiet like a blade sliding through fabric. You silenced her even after she was gone. James' breath shook as he answered, she asked me to keep her truths hidden to spare you. Anna's eyes filled but did not break, her whisper steady. You spared yourself, not me. The chipped mug glimmered, reflecting fractured light across the wooden table. Margaret's smile, frozen in her photograph, radiated through the corner of the room. James' frame shifted, his shadow bending across the floor, his silence betraying his collapse. Anna clutched the photograph tightly against her chest, her whisper a vow. Her words live in me, no matter what you buried. The air grew thick, pressing against both of them, yet only Anna's breath carried weight. James' silence stretched, sharp as chains, but powerless against her defiance. James' voice cracked as he whispered, she confessed to me truths she feared would destroy you. Anna steadied her breath, whispering, she trusted me with her life, and you buried her voice in your silence. He looked away, his body rigid, shadows carving his face into harsh lines. Anna pressed her hand against the floor, her voice sharp. You thought absence was protection, but it is betrayal. Margaret's photograph gleamed brighter in the fading light, her eyes steady, her smile unbroken. James muttered, I thought silence would keep you whole. Anna's eyes burned, tears trembling but unfallen, whispering, it only hollowed me. The chipped mug caught the last glimmer of the lamp, its crack glistening like a scar. The room groaned under the weight of truths long withheld, every silence echoing louder than thunder. Anna pressed the photograph against the wall, her voice trembling but sharp. She gave me her presence, not her silence. You chose to bury her. James stepped forward, his body taut, his lips pressed thin, but no words came. The chipped mug rolled faintly, a hollow clink breaking the stillness. Anna whispered, every silence of yours was betrayal, not love. His face twisted, guilt etched across his features, his silence a confession he could not deny. Shadows sprawled across the floor, jagged and sharp, bending around Anna's body like armor. Margaret's photograph glowed faintly in her hands, a beacon against the quiet. Anna whispered, I will not live in your shadows anymore. The lamp flickered, throwing fractured light across their faces, every flicker sharper than any scream. James' body trembled, but his silence collapsed under her vow. The air hung still. The silence now, a graveyard of unspoken truths. Anna whispered, "Every word you buried lives louder than your silence." James sagged against the wall, his voice breaking. "I thought I was protecting you." Her reply came like a cut, soft yet sharp. "You only protected yourself." Margaret's photograph glowed faintly brighter, her smile unyielding, her presence refusing to vanish. Anna pressed her hand over her chest, her whisper final. "Her voice lives here, not in your silence." James closed his eyes, his face folding under the weight of confession unspoken. The chipped mug gleamed in the lamplight, scarred but steady, as though bearing witness to her resilience. Anna's voice steadied into a vow, "You will not silence me again." The shadows thickened, but this time they shaped themselves around her strength. Emma's hands shook as she dialed Daniel, heart racing like thunder. When his face appeared, she whispered, "Why her? Why not me?" Daniel rubbed his temple, sighing, "Emma, I never asked you to wait." Her body froze at his cruelty, the words slicing deep. She whispered, "But I waited because you promised." His expression hardened. "You turned waiting into chains. I can't breathe with you holding on like this." Emma's tears blurred the screen, her voice breaking. "I gave you everything, Daniel. How do you throw me away so easily?" The silence between them became the loudest answer of all. Emma screamed into the silence, her voice trembling. "Do you know what I gave up for you? Nights, friends, family, pieces of myself. Just to believe in us." Daniel looked away, muttering, "I never asked for sacrifices." Her chest burned, fury mixing with heartbreak. "You didn't ask, but I gave them because I loved you," she cried. His eyes darkened. "You made me your whole world, Emma, and I never wanted that way." Her body shook, the words slicing deeper than any blade. She whispered, "I thought love was carrying each other, not abandoning one to drown." The fight spiraled, Daniel raising his voice for the first time. "I can't do this anymore, Emma. I'm tired of being your everything." She gasped, whispering, "But you are my everything." He shook his head, his words sharp, "And that's the problem." Her heart collapsed inside her chest. She begged, "Don't let this be the end. Don't let her replace me." His jaw clenched, eyes filled with guilt and defiance. "Emma, she makes me feel alive. With you, it's just weight." Emma's scream broke into sobs, her voice trembling. "I carried us both when you stopped trying." Emma collapsed against her desk, voice faint but sharp. "I begged, Daniel. I stayed when it hurt. I chose you every single day." Daniel's eyes softened briefly before he whispered, "And I stopped choosing you a long time ago." Her body shook violently, the truth shredding her spirit. "Then why didn't you set me free?" she cried. He exhaled, defeated. "Because I liked knowing someone still believed in me." Emma slammed her fist on the desk, sobbing. "You kept me prisoner so you could feel like a god." His silence admitted everything. Emma's sobs quieted, replaced by a cold stillness. She whispered, "Then this is it." Daniel's eyes flickered with unease, but he said nothing. Emma closed her laptop slowly, the sound echoing like a door slamming shut. She clutched her chest, whispering to herself, "I've been waiting for a man who already left." The weight pressed down, yet beneath the devastation, a fragile thread of strength stirred. Her tears fell silently, but her eyes burned with the truth she could no longer deny. For the first time she saw the end, not as loss, but as a beginning waiting in the dark. Emma woke up to the pale gray of dawn seeping through the blinds, the world outside moving on while her own felt frozen. She whispered into the quiet, "It's over," her voice trembling but steadier than the night before. The laptop on her desk sat closed, a silent gravestone for a love that had collapsed under lies. She rose slowly, every step heavy, and caught her reflection in the mirror. Red-rimmed eyes, messy hair, a hollowed version of herself. "Who am I without him?" she asked, her breath fogging the glass. Yet as she looked deeper, she saw more than pain. She saw a flicker of someone surviving, fragile but unbroken. Later that morning, Sarah arrived, her arms full of coffee, and the smell of warmth trailing with her. She set the cup in front of Emma and whispered, "You don't have to do this alone." Emma's lips curved in a broken smile as she replied, "I thought strength was holding on, but maybe it's finally letting go." Sarah's hand closed around hers with gentle certainty. "Strength is knowing when enough is enough," she said softly. Emma's tears fell again, but this time they didn't feel like weakness. They felt like the first step toward healing. She whispered, "Maybe pain is how freedom begins." That evening, Emma stepped into the city streets alone. The pavement glistened from rain, neon lights casting colors that rippled like restless memories. Couples brushed past, laughing, their closeness stinging but no longer unbearable. She whispered to herself, "I may be alone, but I'm still here." Each footstep echoed louder, deliberate, as if marking her return to herself. She remembered the countless nights she stayed inside waiting for a message, for a call, for Daniel's attention. Tonight, she wasn't waiting, she was moving forward. The ache lingered, but it felt smaller, fading against the rhythm of her own breath. Back home, Emma pulled open a drawer and found the calendar marked with hearts around their planned calls. For a long moment she just stared at it, her chest heavy with memories. Then, with steady hands, she began tearing it apart. "No more waiting," she whispered, her voice firmer than she felt. The sound of paper ripping filled the silence, but instead of shattering, it soothed. Each torn piece felt like reclaiming herself, bit by bit. She dropped the scraps into the trash and stepped back, breathing deeply. For the first time, the silence didn't suffocate. It gave her space. That night, Emma sat by the window once again, the skyline flickering in cool blues and silvers. For the first time, she wasn't whispering Daniel's name into the dark. She spoke to herself instead, "You deserve more." The words felt foreign but powerful. Her forehead rested against the cold glass, her breath fogging it softly. The tears still came, but they no longer carried only sorrow. They carried release. She whispered again, louder this time, "I will heal." And for once, the silence did not answer cruelly. It left space for her voice, and in that space she found something new, herself. Emma scrolled back to the very first message Daniel ever sent. "I'll love you across any distance." Her chest ached as she whispered, "You didn't love me across the room." The words trembled in her throat, heavy but final. She sat on her bed, surrounded by silence, the echoes of laughter and promises now hollow ghosts. Her hands shook as she highlighted the chat thread, hovering over the option to delete. For a moment she hesitated, whispering, "If I let go of this, I let go of everything." But her finger pressed down, and the screen went blank. Tears rolled, not from regret, but from release. The apartment felt different without Daniel's ghost haunting her phone. Emma whispered, "This silence is mine now." She stood by her mirror, wiping mascara-stained cheeks, staring at herself as though meeting a stranger. Her lips trembled but curved slightly. "You're still here," she said to her reflection. It was the first time she had spoken with kindness to herself in months. Her chest tightened with grief, but beneath it, something steadier rose, resolve. The girl who waited was gone. In her place stood a woman, scarred but standing. Emma pressed her palm against the mirror, as if sealing a vow. No more chains. Emma met Sarah in the cafe again, the same place where warnings once pierced her denial. Sarah reached across the table, eyes searching. "How are you?" Emma breathed in deeply, then replied softly, "Not okay, but better than I was." Sarah squeezed her hand, whispering, "You're stronger than you know." Emma smiled faintly, replying, "Maybe I'm finally learning strength isn't waiting, it's walking away." The words felt heavy yet liberating, as if carving a scar into stone. Sarah's eyes filled with pride, and for once, Emma believed the truth. She wasn't broken beyond repair. She was still standing. That night, Emma stood on her balcony. The city stretched endlessly below her. The wind tugged at her hair, cool against tear-streaked skin. She whispered, "Daniel, you'll never hear this, but you don't get to break me anymore." Her voice was shaky but fierce, carrying into the night. She closed her eyes, remembering his laughter, his lies, his touch that now belonged to someone else. Her chest burned, but it wasn't from longing, it was from the fire of release. "I choose me now," she whispered again, the words final, solid, unshakable. For the first time, the night didn't feel lonely. It felt free. The next morning, Emma sat by the window, phone on the sill, screen black and silent. She whispered one last time, "You'll never light up my phone again." Her chest tightened, but this time, it was not despair, it was closure. She pressed her forehead to the glass, breathing in the stillness. The silence that once suffocated her now felt like her own. The final tear slid down her cheek as the sun rose, spilling golden light across the room. And in that fragile morning glow, Emma finally understood. Endings hurt, but they also set you free. The scar was hers, but so was the freedom.